Amazing proposal exposed. Homeless woman surprises everyone by marrying a billionaire's son. Sarah stood on the gritty sidewalk, her palms smeared with the remnants of paint from a recent piece, a mural that spoke to both chaos and beauty. Around her, the world seemed to move in a blur of commuters rushing past, their lives so polished compared to hers. She felt the familiar weight in her chest, a mix of determination and despair as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows. With her grandmother's health deteriorating, the clock felt like it was ticking louder, every tick a reminder of her own precarious situation. Balancing her passion for art with the harsh reality of being homeless felt like walking a tightrope. She would not falter. She could not. Then there was Mark, the wealthy heir whose eyes held a spark of genuine interest in her craft. Their unexpected friendship felt like a beautiful surrealism painting, colorful yet unsettling. She could hardly believe that someone like him would look past her ragged clothes and instead admire her murals. But what if the gaps between their worlds proved too big? She could taste the fear tainting her dreams, a fear of losing him to respectable expectations. Scandals lie dormant, waiting to erupt, and she felt the pressure mounting. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The whispers started soon after that community art project. Their relationship drew attention, unsavory glances from Mark's family as if her struggles were a contagion that threatened to infect their pristine image. How could a woman still shackled by uncertainty and homelessness belong in their world? Sarah's heart raced with each humiliating glance. She couldn't shake the feeling of being an imposter, an unwanted character in a story she never intended to star in. Her art showcased the vibrancy of life, yet she felt wilted. When Mark's mother made advances to help her, it felt like she was being pushed into a corner, a box she couldn't escape. She needed to prove herself, to show that her passion, her pain, calculated the intensity of her existence. Just as she began to earn the respect she craved within the art community, those same looming shadows cast doubt on her dreams. In a moment of fury, she confronted herself, questioning who she wanted to be. Did she want the safety his family promised, or the authenticity of her own world? As those uncertainties gnawed at her, she decided to invite Mark over for an intimate gathering with her closest friends. A perfect moment to unveil her heart, warped though it might be. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she prepared to embrace the vulnerability of love. With so much at stake, she wondered if she was really ready for the leap that could either bridge their worlds or widen the divide forever. Would she dare to confront the collective gasp that would reverberate from all the whispers around them with a proposal that defined their reality? The night felt electric as she gathered her thoughts, ready to unveil the truth of her feelings, fully aware that everything could be lost in those few critical moments. What would happen when she finally spoke? Would her love withstand the scrutiny, or would it bring the whole precarious edifice crashing down? The air in Sarah's makeshift art studio crackled with anticipation as she prepped for the gathering. Bare walls adorned with her vibrant murals wrapped the room, a frantic yet beautiful testament to her struggle, each brushstroke a reflection of her spirit. She examined her surroundings, searching not for perfection but for a safe space where she could reveal the depths of her heart. Yet underneath that eagerness lurked unease. The clock ticked noisily in the background, each second amplifying her doubts. For every vibrant color she had splashed on canvas, there was a dull gray of reality looming, the fear that Mark might see her world not as an adventure, but as an obligation. With every sound from the bustling street outside, her stomach twisted tighter. Would he turn from her when he witnessed the rawness of her existence? As the hour approached, friends began to arrive, filling the room with laughter and visual warmth. Sarah forced a smile, wrapping herself in a facade of confidence. They were visible reminders of her art's theme, the beauty of contrast against adversity, but a gnawing thought resurfaced. They lived in a world where difficulty was an abstract concept, not a pressing reality. The worry clung to her like a damp chill. When Mark stepped through the doorway, her breath caught in her throat. He looked almost out of place, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos of her studio. Yet there was light in his eyes, the softness of appreciation tugging at her heart. Her resolve wavered slightly as she considered what this impending conversation might unravel. "Wow, it's incredible in here," Mark remarked, his warm voice wrapping around her like a comforting blanket. He wandered closer to the mural she'd just completed, its intricate details telling a story of resilience and hope. As he studied it, Sarah felt the urge to retreat. "It's just graffiti," she mumbled, voice scarcely above a whisper, trying to distance herself from her own creation. "It's not just graffiti. It's a dialogue," he replied, eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "These colors, this intensity, it reflects you." A flicker of hope ignited within her, but the shadows of her reality crept back in. Could Mark really see her through the layers of paint and struggle? Or was his appreciation only surface deep, an infatuation with the artist rather than the person beneath? She summoned her courage, needing to push past the trepidation and accept her truth. "Mark, I need you to understand," Sarah began, heart thundering. The weight of her unspoken proposal hung in the air. "This isn't just about my art or your family's expectations. It's about who I am." His gaze locked onto hers, full of curiosity and patience. "You can tell me anything," he assured her, and that affirmation only stoked the anxiety within. In that moment, the gravity of her situation pressed down heavier than it ever had. Every self-doubt, every fear of association floated to the surface. "What if I'm not enough for you?" she blurted out, voice shaky. "What if my world is too chaotic for someone like you?" Mark's expression shifted, his brow furrowed in thought before he stepped closer, encroaching on the safety zone she had created. "That's not for me to decide. What matters is how we each choose to face the chaos together." The room seemed to shrink around her as she recognized the depth of his sincerity. Yet the ambivalence still hung in the air. Both worlds at a collision point as she mentally prepared to leap into the void of vulnerability. Challenge coiled within her. Could she indeed step into this arena, fully committing to exposing her life while inviting the possibility of rejection? The air was thick with possibilities, and she felt the moment slipping, her heart urging her forward. With her friends watching, Sarah steadied her breath, determined to reclaim her narrative, ready to reveal a truth that may either bind them or tear them apart. "I want you to see everything, Mark. Are you ready for that?" As she braced herself for his response, she caught sight of her reflection, mirroring promise laced with trepidation. What would it reveal once she unleashed her heart? The ground beneath her felt shaky, but it was that very uncertainty that hinted at transformation. Whenever the answer came, she would be prepared. Little did she know, the response would lead to an unexpected revelation, and a moment that would change the trajectory of her life forever. The response hung in the air like a thick fog, each passing second an agonizing reminder of what was at stake. Mark's eyes shifted, filled with palpable curiosity, but underlined by something deeper, something she couldn't quite place. Sarah sensed the turning point, the juncture where her bravery could either fortify their connection or crumble under the weight of her fears. "What do you mean by everything?" he finally asked, a hint of caution in his voice. The question sent her spiraling back into the turbulence of her emotions. It wasn't just her art. It was the entirety of her struggle, the messy landscape of her mind, and the tumultuous journey that had led her to this moment. "I mean," her voice faltered, the words jostling within her. "I mean the chaos, the uncertainty, the days when I feel like I'm drowning in my own creative storm." Each phrase felt like a brick, adding weight to the precarious structure of her heart. "This isn't a fairy tale, Mark. It's a fight for survival and expression all at once." His brow knitted in concentration, a serious acceptance of her reality igniting something inside her. Hope, maybe. Slowly, she felt emboldened to peel back the protective layers she had wrapped around herself. Mark needed to hear the unvarnished truth. "My childhood was marked by instability. My art is born from that chaos, and sometimes it feels like my work is the only anchor. I'm terrified it won't be enough for you." The vulnerability spilled out, threading through the noise of laughter around them, weaving a new tapestry. As she spoke, she could feel the weight of every word, each one an unshackling of doubt. Mark's gaze softened. You've turned chaos into beauty. It's like you've paved a path of resilience. That's remarkable, Sarah. The sincerity in his voice reassured her, resonating with the truth hidden within the storm. He didn't flinch at her reality. He seemed to appreciate it, understanding that beauty is often found amidst chaos. Feeling emboldened, a new thought ignited in her head. But what if that chaos seeps into your life, your family's expectations, your career? Will you still want to be part of my world when it gets hard? Her heart raced at the very notion, but she knew this was a moment for honesty, not retreat. I've never shied away from challenges, he replied, his intensity unwavering. Life isn't about avoiding the chaos. It's about how we navigate it. I want to understand you fully, chaos included. His words ignited a fierce pride within her. She realized that this confrontation was not a contest, nor a judgment. It was a commitment to dive into the complexity together. Still, a nagging doubt clawed at her. What if her truths were too much for a man like him? But then there was the voice of defiance within her. Wasn't this moment an opportunity for transformation rather than stagnation? She could feel her friend's eyes flitting between them, their laughter fading into the background as they recognized the weightiness of what was unfolding. Sarah's confidence surged. This was about her, after all, a reclaiming of her narrative. With trembling resolve, she summoned the last flickers of her courage. Okay then. If you want to be part of this world, you need to see it all. Are you willing to do that? Mark's response illuminated the room, lifting the veil of tension that had gripped her. Show me. I want to be part of your story, even the rough drafts. The declaration reverberated within her like a drumbeat of affirmation, igniting a spark she hadn't expected. Could it be? Was she standing on the cusp of something transformative, an adventure intertwined with both uncertainty and potential? Before she could respond, an idea struck her. She could confront her past, embracing the rough edges in her life as they began to intertwine with Mark's. Perhaps opening her heart meant not just revealing, but also learning to merge, to create something new together. Yet, as those thoughts swirled within her, a lingering fear nestled underneath the exhilaration. What if the costs were higher than she anticipated? What if this beautiful chaos ultimately shattered the foundations of his world? Moments before she opened her mouth to speak again, the door unexpectedly swung wide, and a visitor arrived. Someone from her past she never thought would walk back into her life. With the echoes of laughter transformed into whispers, she turned to see the face that could either mend or break her newfound resolve. The uncertainty consumed her. Would she have the strength to face this new challenge that thundered in, or would it pull her back into the shadows she had just begun to escape? The moment the door swung open, the familiar face sent shivers through Sarah, like ice water dousing her flames of courage. There he was, Lucas, her childhood friend and long-ago confidant. His presence was both a jarring reminder of the life she had escaped and an unexpected challenge to the new reality she had begun to forge with Mark. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her, a blend of surprise and recognition etching deep lines onto his face. Lucas had always held the mirror to her past. The chaotic home life, the whispered secrets, and her struggle for an identity beyond childhood scars. As the laughter faded, an oppressive silence enveloped the gathering, one that felt too thick to slice through. Mark sensed her unease. His hand found hers, an anchor amidst the tumult. But the heat of his grip wasn't enough to shield her from the disquiet swirling inside. She hadn't prepared for this. She wasn't ready to confront her past, especially not now, when she was finally stepping into a world where hope gleamed like a beacon. "What are you doing here?" Sarah managed to choke out, her voice dipped in disbelief, tinged with irritation. The humor of their earlier conversation evaporated like mist under sunlight. "I came to see you," Lucas replied carefully, his voice low but edged with familiarity. "I heard you were here, and I had to know if it was really you." His gaze flickered over to Mark, lingering just a second longer than it should have, as if assessing the challenge he posed. New layers of insecurity bubbled up within her, tumbling over her resolve. What right did Lucas have to stroll back into her life, demanding answers she had been running from? This was supposed to be her moment, not one burdened by the weight of former friendships and the ghosts of choices gone awry. Mark's brow furrowed, riding the line between curiosity and protectiveness. Sarah could feel his questions simmering beneath the surface, intermingled with the desire to keep her safe. But she knew there were some truths he needed to glean, not just for his own sake, but for their connection. "Sarah," Lucas continued, his voice drawing her back from the precipice of panic. "I know you've changed. I just wanted to say—" "Changed?" The word crashed out of her mouth. "You don't know anything about me, Lucas. Not anymore." Her defenses flared, and for a fleeting moment, she relished the power of her anger, the way it wrapped around her heart like a shield. In that moment, the art of self-protection collided with her newfound commitment to authenticity. Sarah had worked too hard to reclaim her narrative, rebuild her worth, and embrace her complex heritage. Lucas represented the chaos she had escaped. Mark squeezed her hand tighter, grounding her in the reality of their present and igniting the flame of determination. Sarah took a deep breath. Confrontation was necessary, however uncomfortable. "If you want to talk, we can do that later," she said, her voice saturated with defiance. "Right now I need to figure out what I want." A flicker of hurt crossed Lucas's face, but was rapidly masked by an unreadable expression. "I came to ask if we could start afresh. I've made a lot of mistakes." "But you're not the one I need to convince," Sarah interrupted, firm in her stance. "I've established my life without the shadows of our past." The confidence surging within her surprised even herself. Reclaiming this narrative wasn't merely about facing Lucas. It was also about asserting her newfound strength. Awareness washed over her, the knowledge that this moment marked a potential turning point not just in her relationship with Mark, but in her entire life. As the murmur of the crowd encroached back into the forefront, Sarah found a part of herself awakening as she faced Lucas. The crossroads she stood upon was daunting, presenting the choice to retreat into old patterns or to boldly forge ahead. There was potential here, tangled up in the threads of chaos and beauty she had learned to navigate. Just as she opened her mouth to voice her desires, the tension thickened in the air once more. It was as if the universe held its breath, waiting to hear the words that could alter the course of her life forever. What was she willing to lose, and what was she ready to embrace? With determination steeling her resolve, she prepared to speak once more, knowing that whatever she chose, it would define her journey into uncharted territories. But just as she gathered the strength to declare what she truly wanted, an unexpected sight caught her eye. A troubling figure lingering near the entrance. A ghost from another chapter whose presence ignited fear she thought she had buried. It was about to get much more complicated. Would she confront this new threat, or would it shatter her carefully built facade? The answer loomed ominously before her, pulsating with uncertainty. The figure standing by the door was unmistakable, a specter from a tumultuous chapter that seemed all too keen to resurface. Sarah's heart raced, caught between incredulity and dread, as the memory of their shared history flickered through her mind like a film reel of misjudgments and heartaches. This was Sam, a person she had both loved and despised, whose presence signaled the potential unraveling of everything she had fought to build. Mark instinctively turned to see the source of her sudden stillness, and his protective instinct immediately flared. "Who is that?" he asked, keeping his voice low as if raising it might shatter the fragility of the moment. "Just someone I used to know." Each word tasted bitter, an admission that felt like a confession. Sarah hated that she felt penned in by her past again, just as she was beginning to feel grounded in her present. With measured breaths, Sarah felt the world retreat to a stillness, the laughter and chatter around them becoming muffled, as if the atmosphere was refusing to acknowledge the tension pooling in her chest. Her perception sharpened. Sam stood with a familiar nonchalance, hands thrust deep in his pockets, the hint of a mocking smirk playing at his lips. Even after all this time, he had the uncanny ability to tap into her insecurities. Mark squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, grounding her once again. "You don't have to talk to him, you know. We can leave. His suggestion ignited a seed of defiance within her. No, she wasn't retreating. Not now. Not when she had taken so many tentative steps forward. As if sensing her resolve, Sam took a few steps forward, his expression shifting to one of mock surprise. Sarah? Is that really you? The girl who used to hide behind books to avoid the world? His voice dripped with condescension, as though he had stumbled upon an old toy he thought long discarded. Something crackled deep within her. The girl who hid was gone, replaced by someone who had clawed her way through the darkness to step into the light. She couldn't allow him to redefine her by their shared history. That was someone else, she declared, her voice steady, almost stronger than she felt inside. And who are you now? A success story? Because from where I'm standing it looks like you're still lost. His jibe cut sharp, but instead of retreating into a shell of self-doubt, she felt an unfamiliar resolve surge within her. It occurred to her that she was facing two threats now, one from her past, challenging her self-worth, and the other from that insistent voice within, insisting she maintain her stride forward. I'm becoming who I was meant to be, she responded, channeling every ounce of newfound strength and conviction she had harnessed over these last few months. What are you doing here, Sam? For a fleeting moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. Perhaps her confidence was disarming. Sarah sensed that each word she spoke crafted a narrative, a dialogue where she declared herself worthy of the life she was building with Mark, a stark contrast to the vulnerabilities of her past. I came to see how far you've fallen, he replied, masking his apprehension with bravado. Or maybe to see if you still crave the chaos? It's not chaos I'm interested in anymore, she retorted, feeling the weight of her experiences converging into the reality she was no longer afraid to confront. This time I'm focused on stability. I'm building a future, not reliving old nightmares. As the words left her mouth, she felt a sense of liberation, a sense that she was finally shedding layers of her past, each one a weight she no longer had to carry. The dichotomy between her former self and the woman she had become pulled taut, but rather than fraying, it began to weave together a new tapestry. Suddenly, amidst the tension of unsettling revelations, Mark shifted, stepping protectively in front of her. You should leave, he said, glancing at Sam with an intensity that suggested he would only tolerate so much. But Sam held his ground, eyeing Mark with an undercurrent of disdain. The pulsating energy in the room transformed, leaving Sarah caught in a vortex of rising stakes once more. I'm not leaving without a word to Sarah, he asserted, making their confrontation unavoidable. The air thickened around them, the weight of the moment crashing into Sarah like a tidal wave of past and present colliding. How would she navigate this confrontation? Would she continue to stand her ground, or would she lose herself in the echoes of past familiarity? As she struggled with her burgeoning identity against the backdrop of old demons, the question circled back to her. What did true strength entail? The answers eluded her just as Sam's mocking laughter began to fill the void left by her hesitation. The moment hung precariously, with the potential for revelation or destruction stretching taut, waiting for Sarah to decide which path she would take. Would she shatter the facade of her past, or would she allow it to silence her once again? The choice loomed, heavy with implications. But beyond fear and uncertainty, she began to sense a dawning realization. She was not merely a passive character in someone else's story. She was the author of her own. What would she choose to write next? The air thickened, pressing against her chest as the weight of Sam's presence bore down. Each tick of the clock in the background felt intentional, sharp, slicing through the charged silence. Sarah's resolve surged anew, bolstered by the memory of every late-night self-reflection, the long, weary hours she'd spent sculpting a new reality for herself. I don't know why you think your opinions matter to me anymore, Sam, she began, the words flowing more assertively now. Her past with him was a closed chapter. You don't define my worth, and you never did. Sam laughed mockingly, a sound that seemed to bounce off the walls, echoing the insecurities she had thought were long buried. You still haven't changed, I see. You're just playing dress-up with this new life of yours, trying to forget what you really are. In that moment, Sarah felt a flicker of doubt, but it was swiftly quelled by a myriad of memories. She thought of the presentations she had meticulously prepared at work, the way she had toiled to prove herself, not just to others, but to herself. It was her metamorphosis that fueled her voice now, making it strong and unyielding. "I've done more in the past year than you've done in your whole life," she countered, her confidence ignited by the realization of her accomplishments. "I built something: career, friendships, and stable relationships. Your chaotic lifestyle is not what I'm interested in. I am finally proud of who I am becoming." Mark looked at Sarah with a glimmer of support, an understanding crossing his features as he stepped closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. The gesture steadied her. They were a team, not just in this confrontation, but in the life they were building together, a life that had no space for echoes of the past. Sam's facade cracked for a brief instant, and through his bravado, she could see glimpses of uncertainty. "You think that just because you've got a decent job and a man at your side, you've got it all figured out?" he scoffed, words laced with venom. "Yes, I do," Sarah replied, an edge of defiance in her tone. "And it's not about validation from you or anyone else. It's about learning to believe in myself." With that proclamation, she felt something shift within. No longer did she need Sam's approval, nor did she require validation from others. She was carving a new path, one anchored in self-acceptance. "What's keeping you from leaving, Sam?" she demanded, her voice steady, fear peeling away layer by layer. "If you're really here just to check on me, clearly I'm doing better without you." He paused, glancing between the two of them, and in that hesitation, Sarah found strength. Sam wasn't the control she feared anymore. He was just a remnant of who she had once been. It was almost liberating. "Maybe I'm here to remind you that people don't really change, Sarah. They just hide themselves a little better," Sam replied, his grin faltering. His words sparked a wave of reflection, merging her fears with the confidence she had cultivated. "Maybe," she retorted thoughtfully, "but in your case you're just hiding behind self-loathing and bitterness. You're the one stuck in the past." With each exchange, she felt excitement rise within her as if unveiling a greater truth. How often had she let someone's negativity become a weight on her shoulders? It was no longer tolerable. She had the right to decide not only who she was, but how she was treated, and that started with this very moment. Then, as if struck by a realization, Sam's mocking demeanor wavered entirely. "You think it'll last? This life?" he asked, the bravado diminishing into a serious inquiry. "Yes, I do. I'm not running from my past anymore. I'm confronting it," she answered, the tremor in her voice masked by conviction. His words opened a door of curiosity. Would he genuinely want to know, or merely challenge her resolve? "I didn't come here looking to reignite anything. I'm moving forward instead of clinging to old ghosts. If you can't see that, you'll remain stuck. I refuse to be tied to your definition of stability." The words hung in the air, a silent declaration echoing between them, and Sarah felt a balance shift, not just in this confrontation but within herself, as if unshackling a weight she didn't know she still carried. But not all was resolved. The questions lingered. What other truths remained buried? Just beneath the surface, Sarah sensed the beginning of a deeper uncovering, one filled with potential hurdles, but buoyed by the strength she had fought to establish. "Guess I'll have to see how this story plays out," Sam said, taking a step back, his expression now one of wary intrigue. As he turned and retreated into the crowd, Sarah felt a rush of empowerment. The past had given her scars, but they were now badges of resilience rather than reminders of shame. Amidst the turmoil, she caught focus on Mark, the trust and reassurance in his eyes rekindling a warmth within. They had each other, and that was the foundation upon which she would build her future. But a nagging thought lingered. What collateral damage might still echo in her life from this confrontation? With newfound strength pulsing through her, Sarah faced the remaining uncertainties head-on, her resolve hardening with each moment. In the wrap of her embrace with Mark, she questioned if perhaps now was the time to unveil more hidden truths about herself, those she hadn't fully confronted yet. What might she discover about not just her past, but the future she envisioned? Would she negotiate her identity or define it anew? The real work was just beginning. As the clamor of the crowd dimmed behind her, Sarah stood at the edge of the room, her heart racing and her mind swirling. She glanced over at Mark, who was still wrapped up in conversation with friends. They had formed a life together that felt solid, but the echoes of her encounter with Sam had dredged up deeper questions about her identity and aspirations. A barely perceptible anxiety gnawed at her. What was the real cost of her newfound confidence? Taking a deep breath, she stepped away from the social whirlwind to find a quieter place, a small balcony that looked out over the twinkling city lights. Moments before, she had launched a pointed declaration against her past. Yet here she was, retreating into the recesses of her mind. The stillness of the night contrasted sharply with her internal chaos, and she wrestled with conflicting emotions. She reached into her pocket and fished out the small notebook she carried everywhere. The pages were filled with her thoughts, sketches of dreams, and ideas she had cultivated. It was her sanctuary, a tactile reminder of her growth and aspirations. Flipping to a blank page, she began to write furiously, capturing her feelings about the confrontation with Sam, reflecting on how his words had lingered in the air, unsettling, yet illuminating. Writing had always been her escape, a medium through which she harnessed her thoughts and fears. With each stroke of the pen, Sarah felt the layers of uncertainty peel back. Sam's jab about people not changing echoed in her mind. Could he be right? Or was the evolution of the self intricately tied to the pursuit of truth and self-acceptance? The realization struck her. This was not just a battle with Sam, but a confrontation with the insecurities she had once allowed to define her. What if much of her doubt stemmed from fear of stepping into the unknown? She envisioned herself beyond the parameters of her past, not just in career accomplishments, but in the richness of her relationships and inner fulfillment. Suddenly, Facebook notifications chimed from her phone, pulling her back to the present. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from a colleague about an upcoming project presentation at work. The project was a major pitch that promised visibility and possibly a promotion, potentially transformative for her career. Excitement registered alongside a creeping dread. What if she could not deliver? The thought was paralyzing. Yet, deep down, she recognized this fear as a remnant of her old self. That fear no longer wielded power over her. She quickly jotted down the details of the project, stepping into a decision. She would take charge and approach it with the very courage she had summoned earlier in her confrontation with Sam. Feeling invigorated, Sarah toyed with the idea of embedding her personal story into the presentation, reinforcing her message with authenticity, showing how her journey had shaped her insight. The realization was liberating. Her past experiences, painful as they had been, were tools for growth rather than shackles. Just as she felt a spark of determination, she noticed Mark leaning against the balcony doorframe, watching her with curiosity. The warmth of his gaze melted away the remnants of her earlier uncertainty. "Hey, you all right?" he asked, concern lacing his tone. She met his eyes, absorbing the profound trust they shared. "I'm more than all right, actually," she answered, tilting her head slightly, a smile creeping to her lips. "I'm realizing I need to own my past, not run from it." Mark nodded, a knowing smile breaking across his face. "You're stronger than you think, Sarah. Every day you're defining who you are, and I'm in awe of that." Feeling emboldened, she extended her hand, inviting him to join her in the shared moment of anticipation and growth. But there still remained the question of how to balance vulnerability with strength. In the depths of her heart, an awareness of the unfolding challenge gripped her, the true essence of reconstructing her narrative. What new revelations awaited her as she stepped closer to her goals, and what shadows from the past would she have to confront in her pursuit? "Let's head back. I have a proposal for you," she teased gently, leaving a trail of intrigue in her wake. Mark raised his eyebrows, intrigued. "Oh, really? What kind of proposal?" The corners of her mouth curled into a mischievous grin. "A team effort for that project I just mentioned. Are you in?" As they turned together toward the chaotic social scene, Sarah felt the weight of her own story shift on its axis. The dance of emotional upheaval and professional ambition was only beginning. The most significant decisions lay ahead, and the leap she was preparing to take would shape not just her career, but her identity in ways she had yet to fully comprehend. How would her journey of self-discovery translate into her professional ambitions, and is Mark truly ready to support her in the unveiling of her full potential? The vibrant chatter of the room surged back into focus as Sarah and Mark stepped inside, the warmth of their shared moment lingering in the back of her mind. It was as if she had emerged from a dream into a buzzing reality, filled with swirling emotions and assertive thoughts. The pulse of ambition began to rise again, dissipating any remnants of earlier hesitation. "You know," Mark began, pulling her slightly away from the crowd, "I admire how you're approaching this project. You've really changed." The sincerity in his voice both excited and unnerved her. It was a reminder of the transformation she was in the midst of, one that demanded she confront her past head-on, while also carving out a new identity within the corporate world. "Thanks," she replied, the words spilling out with a mixture of gratitude and an emerging sense of purpose. As the small talk resumed around them, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on the gravitas of her commitment to using her own story in the presentation. Sharing her vulnerabilities would be risky. What if her colleagues scrutinized her authenticity? Yet hadn't she just demonstrated strength in confronting Sam? An urgent thought tugged at her. Perhaps it was time to break through this barrier she'd built. She recalled the way fear had shadowed her past endeavors. A step forward always felt like a step back for the girl who second-guessed her worth. But now it felt different. The anxiety that once stifled her seemed smaller, more manageable. She began to strategize. How could she structure her narrative to resonate? The memories she had long buried felt like untapped fuel. They were parts of her that could inspire others, showing them they too could rise from their struggles. What would it look like to transform her most daunting moments into a badge of honor? As they mingled, Sarah's mind buzzed with potential outlines. The job market was competitive. If she could weave her experiences into a compelling story, it would set her pitch apart and showcase her vulnerability as her greatest asset. "Hey, you're deep in thought again," Mark nudged her playfully, pulling her back to the present. His teasing smile offered a sanctuary amidst the chaos of ideas. "I'm just thinking about the project, how important it is for me." She searched his face for unease, half afraid he might find her intention too bold or foolish. To her surprise, Mark looked proud, the confidence in his expression a balm against her earlier doubts. "I can help you practice if you want. We can brainstorm together." His offer felt like an anchor when her thoughts threatened to pull her under. This was their team indeed, supporting each other in both personal endeavors and professional ambitions. They moved toward a more secluded corner, Sarah's heart beating faster as they paced through possibilities. "What if I implemented a personal story to open, something that defines my journey, my struggles?" The words poured out, reflecting her eagerness to embrace her experience fully. Mark nodded, listening intently. "That sounds powerful. But make sure it connects back to the main theme, the project's goals. Don't lose sight of your core message." His thoughtful input validated her goal while simultaneously grounding her. She could see that with every suggestion Mark offered, the gaps in her plan filled themselves, offering clarity she hadn't expected to find. It was a collaborative process of self-discovery, a vivid dance of ideas and aspirations entwined within their conversation. As they finalized her presentation's framework, a surge of adrenaline coursed through her. For the first time, she could visualize herself at the forefront of a room, sharing not just statistics or insights, but a profound narrative. "I can't believe I'm actually excited about this," she admitted, laughter bubbling forth. "I want this to reflect my journey of growth and hope." "Then let it," he replied gently, resting a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "The world needs genuine voices, and yours is one worth hearing." The weight of his words settled in her chest, a delicate mixture of humility and empowerment. Yet doubt flared momentarily. Would they embrace her authentic self, or would they dismiss her as merely emotional? Seemingly out of nowhere, the question lingered. Could she truly harness the courage required to reveal her past before the very colleagues who had once seen her as just another face in the crowd? As the noise around them faded, she felt steadier in her choice, but the gnawing fear persisted. Perhaps this would be the moment not only of professional reckoning but of personal liberation. With the project presentation looming, an uncharted pathway began to unfold. But beneath that newfound confidence, she sensed the tension building. What barriers would she still have to dismantle in her rise? The next challenge awaited her, not merely in the boardroom, but in the very essence of who she was. The time had come to confront the shadows shifting at the edges of her consciousness. They were responses to her transformation, waiting to either support or sabotage her. What awaited her, both in her professional journey and in the deeper realms of self-exploration that loomed just out of sight. As the evening stretched on, Sarah felt the electrifying potential of her ideas collide with her fears. Seated in the corner with Mark, surrounded by the remnants of snacks and the low hum of continuing conversations, she allowed the gravity of the situation to settle within her gut. The upcoming presentation was not just another assignment. It was an entry into an exhilarating yet treacherous phase of her life. "Okay, what's next?" Mark prompted, snapping her out of her spiral of thought. "Next," she echoed, allowing the word to hang in the air, "is figuring out how I'll actually feel standing in front of everyone." An involuntary shudder passed through her. The image of her colleagues, their attention fixed on her, was both intoxicating and suffocating. All those faces, the curious, the skeptical, the indifferent, swarmed her mind. Would they see growth, or would they visualize the version of her that still lived in the shadows? "Focus on what you want them to take away," Mark encouraged, his voice steady like a metronome. "Make it about the impact you want to create. Your story can inspire." She straightened her back, inhaling sharply. Right. Impact. The word beckoned to her like a lighthouse beacon illuminating jagged rocks. A moment of clarity washed over her, gradually peeling away layers of hesitation. "How about starting with a defining moment?" she suggested, her eyes brightening as inspiration coursed through her. "Something that underscores my struggles and how I overcame them." "Exactly," Mark nodded. "What about that time when you faced down that unfair situation with Sam?" The mere mention of Sam's name sent a ripple of resentment through her. He represented a time of turmoil in her life, a dismissive demeanor, threats that chipped away at her confidence. Was she really to use that moment as a foundation? "Yes, but—" She hesitated, biting her lip. "I don't want to seem like I'm just airing dirty laundry." Mark leaned closer, his sincerity a comforting balm. "You'll frame it responsibly. Your experience shaped how you operate now. Your resilience, your insights. It's not just about the fallout. It's about what you built after the ruins." Her heart raced. "You might be right. If I can communicate my journey without letting bitterness seep in, it could show my growth and resilience. It might transform that setback into a launch pad." The thought was invigorating, a tethering force that pulled her toward self-discovery. Mark's unwavering belief in her sparked a new conviction. She had something to say, a narrative forged through struggles, true authenticity. "Can you help me with a structure?" Sarah asked, excitement bubbling within her. Mark quickly jotted down ideas, their conversation shifting into an intense brainstorm. They fleshed out how her past with Sam would lead her to highlight her current ambitions and the space she aimed to create for change in her workplace. The process felt thrilling. Then it hit her, the enormity of vulnerability required. What if they mock me? What if they see me as unprofessional, too emotional? Mark's grip tightened on his pen. "Then you lead with courage. Use that fear. It connects you to them. They might just admire you for it." Admiration. The word struck a chord, resonating deep within her. Could she dare to believe that she might be worthy of admiration? Would her colleagues respect her for revealing her true self? As the idea gained momentum, Sarah carefully stacked her ambitions against the backdrop of insecurities. Her experiences were formidable, battles she had fought in silence, but now they could become stories of resilience. Mark spoke again. "Let's finish this framework tonight. I want you set and ready to own your narrative." He punched ideas back and forth, his enthusiasm contagious. Yet, Beneath her excitement lay a darker undercurrent warning her of the risks ahead. This project had become a patchwork of ambition and vulnerability, strengths intertwined with her insecurities. She was boldly stepping into her power, but were there unknown forces ready to undermine her? With their plans roughly sketched out and enthusiasm swirling, Sarah was pushed further into her introspection. She discerned that this would be a balance between her professional aspirations and personal growth, a moment that could define her trajectory in ways she had yet to understand. As they wrapped up, Sarah felt a unique blend of exhilaration and anxiety. She was preparing to shatter the glass barrier she had built around herself. But what if the final confrontation, both within and external, was more arduous than anticipated? The shadows waiting patiently in the corners of her mind whispered doubts and riddles of the unknown. What awaited her in that presentation could either solidify her ascendance or plunge her back into her insecurities. She sensed that this was only the beginning, culminating in a pivotal moment where everything could change. What challenges lingered on the horizon, ready to blur the line between her past and her present? The heart of her journey was not just bound to the boardroom, but to the deeper revelations that were about to unfold. In the meeting room, the air buzzed with a palpable energy. Colleagues gathered around long, polished tables, reviewing slides and exchanging ideas. Yet Sarah felt a looming sphere of uncertainty enveloping her like an unyielding fog. Standing at the front, her heart raced, not merely from nerves, but from the weight of her personal stakes. This was no longer just about delivering a presentation. It was the unveiling of herself, of the woman forged in chaos and color, of the artist and the survivor. As Mark settled into a corner with a reassuring thumbs up, she drew a steadying breath, centering herself in the present. The moment had arrived, the culmination of her struggles, her revelations, and their intertwined narratives etched into her story. Her palms sometimes trembled, but now felt fierce against the intricacies of her notebook, holding tightly to the outlines she had meticulously crafted alongside him. With each passing moment, Sarah felt the familiar stir of vulnerabilities gnawing away. Yet deep beneath her insecurities lay a burgeoning resolve. She was no longer just the girl from the shadows, nor solely the mural artist. She was evolving into her own narrative, bold and unapologetic. But what would the room's reception be? Would they absorb her journey with compassion, or would they reduce her to mere sentimentality? As her colleagues quieted, she glimpsed a mixture of attentiveness and skepticism etched across their faces. The projection flickered to life, illuminating their surroundings. The first slide was a silhouette of chaos, abstract and dissonant, an image that conveyed her past undeniably. "Today I want to share my story," Sarah began, her voice steady with intent. Not merely to disclose old wounds, but to unveil how they transformed into strokes of resilience. Her heart thundered with the freedom of self-assertion, a cascade of emotions that wanted to rush forth. As she proceeded through the slides, carefully transitioning from moments of darkness to fragments of light, the unsafe childhood, the supportive discovery of art, the confrontation with Sam, her voice grew stronger, more resolute. She recounted the very night Mark had encouraged her to bare her soul to the world. The way connections formed through genuine vulnerability transcended the chaos of the past. She noticed the room's energy shift. Skeptical frowns replaced by thoughtful nods as her narrative wove materials of both failure and triumph together. This was not about perfect art. It was the beauty born from imperfections and grappling with realities, far more compelling than aspirational fantasies. As she shared her ambition to not just be a participant, but to foster change, to create inclusive spaces in the corporate environment, Sarah felt empowerment welling up within her. The realization crystallized. This wasn't just a professional pitch. It embodied the embodiment of personal discovery and professional aspiration aligned. Pausing at the juncture of personal misery and artistic glow, she pulled a deep breath, her confidence fortified against every self-doubt that had previously clutched her tightly. She removed the veil of fear, addressing her colleagues not just as co-workers, but as witnesses to her evolution. "I stand before you today not just to present a project, but to extend an invitation for each one of you, to confront your own circumstances, to find beauty within chaos, and step beyond what you think you must be." Her voice cracked not from fragility, but from a passionate resolve that radiated strength. As the final slide showcased a powerful mural she created inspired by her journey, a mural bursting with color and life, Sarah could sense the resonance her words held. Each brushstroke she had splattered onto the canvas was now boldly finding expression through her. It was about connection, a call to embrace vulnerability, bravery, and authenticity. Exhales of relief flooded through her as colleagues responded with applause, genuine recognition echoing between them, their admiration suffusing the air. In those moments of validation, the breath of freedom washed through her. Sarah had dismantled the barriers of judgment she once feared so greatly. After the presentation concluded, Mark met her at the door, his pride shining through his smile. "You did it, Sarah," he exclaimed, embracing her. "Your story is your power." The depth of that acknowledgement etched a prominent mark upon her heart. For so long she had feared exposing herself, but through vulnerability, she had discovered strength, a strength that had always been harbored within her. No longer a passive observer of her narrative, she had become the author of every chapter ahead. As they walked out together, laughter still reverberating around them, she was finally ready to draft new experiences, unfolding not into the shadows of past relationships, but into the vibrant expanse of her future. With every stride, Sarah felt liberated. Her artistic expression was more than simple creativity. It was catharsis, ambition, and reconciliation interwoven to ignite new beginnings. The transitions from girl to woman, from artist to professional, were now evident and celebrated. Together with Mark, they summoned new horizons, both personal and professional, each step fortified by the strength she had fought to claim. Sarah stood at the precipice of newfound aspirations that mirrored her vibrant murals, each corner of her life reflecting omnipotent growth and potential, no longer seen as chaotic, but rather as beautiful. This was her truth, the culmination of every struggle molded into remarkable resolve. And as they embraced the future ahead, she knew she would meet every challenge with the artistry of authenticity she now freely wielded. In a world where genuine voices were rare, she had boldly chosen to engage wholeheartedly with hers. Now was the time to solidify that journey. She would not retreat into old patterns. Her demons had become allies of growth in a tale only she could portray. The weight of her past was no longer a burden, but a canvas waiting to be painted anew. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that might transform your own journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and encourage more inspiring tales to surface. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's bold journey. What lessons resonated with you? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this message of overcoming, so they can step into their authentic selves too. Don't wait even one more second to show your support for stories that empower personal transformations.